Jake Morrison knew he was going to die. His oxygen tank showed only 20 minutes of air left, and his damaged spacesuit leaked heat into the cold vacuum around him. The debris from the colony ship New Horizon floated all around him like a graveyard of twisted metal and broken dreams. 3 days ago, 50,000 people had been alive on that ship. Men, women, and children who had left Earth to build a new life among the stars. Now they were all dead, killed by aliens who showed no mercy. Jake watched helplessly as the enemy ships tore through the New Horizon's hull like paper. He saw his wife Lisa and daughter Emma get pulled into space when the emergency doors failed. Their faces haunted him as he drifted alone in the darkness. Thiugi. Aliens called themselves the Zelak. They came without warning and attacked without reason. Their ships were huge and black, covered in spikes and weapons. They fired on everything that moved. When the New Horizon tried to surrender, they kept firing. When the escape pods launched, they shot them down one by one. Jake only survived because his pod had been damaged and looked dead in the water. He floated there for 3 days watching the Zelak ships finish their work. They took nothing from the wreckage. They seemed to kill just because they could. After they left, Jake tried to reach other survivors on his radio, but heard only silence. He was alone with the dead. The cold was getting worse. His suit's heater had been damaged in the attack and the batteries were almost empty. His hands and feet already felt numb. Soon the cold would reach his heart and lungs. At least it would be quick. At least he would see Lisa and Emma again. Jake closed his eyes and thought about better times. He remembered Emma's 6th birthday party, when she blew out the candles and made a wish to see the stars. He remembered Lisa's laugh when he told her about the colony program. They had been so excited to start fresh on a new world. They never imagined it would end like this. A soft glow made him open his eyes. Something was moving toward him through the debris field. At first he thought it was another piece of wreckage, but this one moved with purpose. As it got closer, Jake saw it was a ship unlike anything he had ever seen. The vessel was silver and smooth, with curves that looked almost alive. Parts of it seemed to glow with soft blue light. It was beautiful in a way that human ships never were. The Zelak ships had been all angles and aggression, but this one felt peaceful somehow. An opening appeared in the ship's side. It looked like a flower blooming in reverse. Gentle arms reached out toward Jake, not the metal claws of the Zelak, but something soft and careful. The arms wrapped around his damaged suit and pulled him toward the light. Jake tried to fight, thinking this might be another trap, but his strength was gone. The arms carried him into a warm chamber filled with breathable air. He felt his suit being carefully removed by invisible hands. His damaged body was lifted onto something soft and comfortable. When Jake opened his eyes again, he was looking at an alien face. The being had blue skin that seemed almost transparent, with dark eyes that were larger than human eyes. Its head was shaped differently than a human head, more oval and smooth. When it moved, it seemed to flow rather than walk. The alien spoke, but Jake heard the words inside his mind rather than through his ears. I am Kira of the Ethon people. You are safe now, human Jake Morrison. Jake tried to sit up, but his body was too weak. How do you know my name? We learned your language from your ship's computers before the Zelak destroyed everything. We have been watching the attack from a safe distance. We are sorry we could not help sooner. Why didn't you help? Jake's voice was angry. 50,000 people died. My family died. Kira's large eyes seemed sad. We are not warriors like you humans. We are healers and explorers. We have no weapons that could fight the Zelak ships. We can only save those we find alive after the battles are over. Jake felt tears on his face. The alien had saved his life, but what was the point? Everyone he loved was gone. I should have died with them. Perhaps, but you are alive for a reason. The Zelak have been destroying worlds for many years. They take what they want and kill the rest. Your people are not the first to suffer this way. How many others? Hundreds of worlds, millions of beings. The Zilak grow stronger with each victory. They believe nothing can stop them. Jake managed to sit up with Kira's help. The alien's touch was warm and gentle. Around him, he could see the inside of their ship. Everything looked organic, like being inside a living creature. The walls pulsed softly with light and the air smelled of flowers. "Where are we going?" Jake asked. "To our homeworld first, so you can heal properly. Then we will take you wherever you wish to go. Do you have other colonies, other ships?" "Earth. Our home planet has billions of people and a space fleet, but they don't know about the Zilak yet." Kira nodded slowly. "Then perhaps it is good that you survived. Your people will need to know what is coming." Jake looked out through a window at the debris field falling away behind them. Somewhere in that wreckage were the bodies of his wife and daughter. The Zilak thought they had won another easy victory, but they had made a mistake. They had left one human alive to tell the story. "The Zilak don't know humans very well," Jake said quietly. "What do you mean?" Jake's eyes were hard as he looked at his rescuer. "They think we're like the other species they've attacked. They think we'll be easy to destroy or easy to control, but they're wrong. When humans lose everything, when we have nothing left to lose, that's when we become most dangerous." Kira seemed puzzled. "But they have destroyed your colony. How can you fight back?" "Because Earth is still out there. Because there are 4 billion humans who don't even know the Zilak exist yet. Because leaving me alive means someone will go back to warn them." Jake's voice grew stronger as he spoke. The Zilak just started a war with a species that never learned how to quit. Outside the ship, the stars shone cold and distant, but Jake no longer felt alone in the darkness. He had work to do. The Zilak had saved him from the vacuum of space, without meaning to. Now he would make sure they regretted that mistake for whatever time they had left. The Ethon ship called Starweaver moved through space in ways Jake had never seen before. Instead of the roar and vibration of human engines, everything was silent and smooth. Kira explained that their ships folded space around themselves, stepping from one place to another like walking through doors that existed only for a moment. Jake spent his first week healing in the ship's medical bay. The Ethon had technology that could fix almost anything wrong with a living body. Machines that looked like metal flowers touched his skin and repaired the damage from 3 days in space. His frostbite disappeared, his bruises faded, and even old scars from his military service began to heal, but the wounds in his heart stayed the same. Kira visited him every day, bringing food and conversation. The alien seemed genuinely interested in learning about humans. She asked about Earth, about human families, about why Jake had joined the colony mission. Her questions were gentle but persistent. "Your species confuses us," Kira admitted one day as they sat in the ship's observation deck. Through the clear walls, stars streamed past like ribbons of light. "We have studied the records from your ship's computers. Humans seem to fight constantly, even among yourselves. Yet you also show great kindness to strangers." Jake thought about that for a long time. Maybe that's why we fight so much. We care too much about things to just let them slide. The Zilak fight too, but only to take what others have. They do not fight to protect. Then they don't really know how to fight at all. Kira's large eyes focused on him. "Explain this." Jake leaned back in his chair, staring out at the stars. "Fighting just to take things is easy. You hit someone smaller than you and take their stuff. But fighting to protect something, fighting when you have everything to lose, that's different. That's when you find out what you're really made of." Over the following days, Kira showed Jake more of the ship and introduced him to other Ethan crew members. There were only 12 of them aboard, and each one seemed to have a different specialty. Some worked with the ship's living systems, others studied the stars and planets they passed. All of them were curious about Jake, but also careful not to overwhelm him. The Ethon were an old race, Kira explained. They had been exploring space for thousands of years before humans learned to make fire. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, watched species learn to travel between stars only to destroy themselves in wars. They had learned to be peaceful because they had seen too much violence. "We used to be different," Kira told Jake as they walked through the ship's central garden. Plants from dozens of worlds grew together in careful harmony, their leaves glowing softly in the artificial light. Long ago, we fought wars like other species. We had weapons that could crack planets, and armies that numbered in the millions. What changed? We won a great war against an enemy that threatened to destroy us. But when the fighting ended, we looked around and saw that we had become everything we hated. Our worlds were poisoned, our people were scarred, and our enemies were all dead. Victory felt like defeat. Jake touched a flower that reminded him of roses from Earth. So you gave up fighting completely? We chose a different path. We became healers instead of warriors, explorers instead of conquerors. We have been following that path for 3,000 years. And now the Zelak are destroying everything you've built. Kira's face showed sadness. Yes, we save who we can, but we cannot stop them. They have weapons and numbers we cannot match. Every year they grow stronger while we grow fewer. Jake stopped walking and looked at her directly. How many Ethan are left? Perhaps 50,000 across all our worlds. We do not reproduce quickly, and many choose not to have children in these dark times. 50,000. Jake shook his head. There are more people than that in some human cities. We know we are a dying race. The Zelak will find our hidden worlds eventually. When they do, the Ethan will become another extinct species they destroyed. Not if I have anything to say about it. Kira looked puzzled. You are one human. What can you do? Jake smiled for the first time since the attack. On the new horizon, it was not a happy smile. I can go home and tell Earth what's coming. I can warn my people that there's an enemy out here that needs to be stopped. And I can make sure they know that the Ethan are the good guys. But the Zelak have thousands of ships. Earth would be outnumbered greatly. Numbers don't mean everything in a fight. The Zelak have been beating up peaceful species for so long they've gotten soft. They don't know what it's like to fight someone who hits back. As the days passed, Jake learned more about both the Ethan and their enemies. The Zelak hegemony controlled dozens of star systems through a combination of overwhelming force and efficient cruelty. They would appear at a world without warning, destroy any defenses, then demand complete surrender. Those who submitted became slaves. Those who resisted died. The Ethan had been studying them for years, hoping to find some weakness they could exploit. But the Zelak were too strong and too ruthless. They had crushed every species that tried to stand against them. You said they've never faced serious resistance, Jake pointed out during one of their planning sessions. Maybe that's their weakness. How can weakness come from strength? Jake pulled up tactical displays showing Zelak battle formations. The patterns were efficient, but predictable. They're bullies. Bullies get used to easy fights. When they finally run into someone who fights back properly, they don't know what to do. Kira studied the displays with new interest. Your people have experience fighting beings as strong as yourselves? Stronger. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've gotten very good at it. Maybe too good, but that experience might be useful now. The Ethan have technologies that humans lack. Our space-folding drives, our material sciences, our energy systems. But we lack the knowledge of warfare. Jake nodded slowly. And humans have tactics, strategies, and weapons the Zelak have never seen. Plus, we're stubborn enough to keep fighting even when we're losing. You propose an alliance? I propose we save both our species. The Ethan need warriors, and humans need technology. Together we might have a chance. Kira was quiet for a long time, thinking. When she finally spoke, her mental voice was careful. The Ethan Council will need to approve such an alliance. Many of our people fear that working with warriors will make us like the Zelak. The difference is what you fight for, Jake said. The Zelak fight to take and destroy. We would fight to protect and save. And if we agree to this alliance, what would you need from us? Jake looked out at the stars, again, thinking of Earth and all the people there who had no idea what was coming. Time, technology, and a fast ship to get me home. The Star Weaver is fast. Then let's go warn Earth that the neighborhood just got a lot more dangerous. As the ship changed course toward the Sol system, Jake felt something he had not felt since watching his family die. He felt hope. The Zelek thought they had destroyed the New Horizon without consequence. They had no idea they had just created the alliance that would bring them down. The journey to Earth took 4 months using Ethan's spacefolding technology. During that time, Jake worked with Kira and her crew to understand everything they knew about the Zelak hegemony. The picture that emerged was terrifying and clear. The Zelak controlled 47 star systems, each one taken through overwhelming force and held through fear. Their military operated over 3,000 warships of various sizes, from small raiders to massive dreadnoughts. They had never lost a major battle because they never fought fair fights. They attacked only when they had crushing superiority, in numbers and firepower. Their society was built around conquest and domination. The Zelek themselves were tall, reptilian creatures with thick scales and natural weapons. They lived for battle and saw other species as either useful slaves or obstacles to be removed. They had no art, no philosophy, no science that was not focused on war and control. They are efficient killers, Kira explained as they studied intercepted Zelak communications. But they are not creative. They use the same tactics against every enemy because those tactics have always worked. Jake absorbed every detail he could. He learned about Zelak ship designs, their weapon systems, their command structure. He studied recordings of their attacks on other worlds, looking for patterns and weaknesses. The Ethon had decades of intelligence, data, but they had never known what to do with it. Your people are remarkable observers, Jake told Kira one day. You've documented everything perfectly. You just never had anyone who knew how to use it. We are not warriors. We do not think like warriors. That's going to change. Jake also spent time learning about Ethon technology. Their ships were grown, rather than built, using living materials that could repair themselves and adapt to different conditions. Their weapons were energy-based and incredibly precise, but they were designed for surgical strikes rather than massive destruction. Their space-folding drives could move a ship across vast distances instantly, but each jump required careful calculation and preparation. Most impressive was their ability to share thoughts and emotions through a kind of telepathic network. Ethan was connected to others of their kind, allowing them to work together with perfect coordination. Jake could not join this network fully, but Kira could translate for him. This could be the key, Jake realized, during one planning session. The Zelak expect their enemies to fight like individuals. They've never faced an enemy that could coordinate perfectly across multiple ships and systems. When Earth finally appeared on the Starweaver's sensors, Jake felt a mix of relief and fear. The blue-green world looked exactly as he remembered, surrounded by orbital stations and patrol ships. Humanity had been busy in the years since he left. Space traffic was heavier, the lunar colonies were bigger, and new stations had appeared throughout the solar system. The first contact was tense. Earth Defense Command scrambled fighters when an unknown alien vessel appeared near Jupiter. Jake's transmission from the Starweaver prevented an immediate attack, but the human ships kept their weapons trained on the alien vessel as it slowly approached Earth. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the New Horizon Colony mission, he broadcast, on all emergency frequencies. I am aboard a friendly alien vessel requesting permission to dock. I have critical information about a threat to Earth. The response came from Admiral Helen Crawford, commander of Earth Defense Command. Captain Morrison, our records show the New Horizon is missing and presumed lost. Please identify yourself and your current situation. Jake took a deep breath. The New Horizon was attacked and destroyed by hostile aliens 3 months ago. 50,000 colonists are dead. I was rescued by the beings who are bringing me home. We need to talk immediately. Within hours, Jake found himself in the Situation Room deep beneath the Pentagon, facing Admiral Crawford and her senior staff. The room was filled with military officers, government officials, and scientists. All of them looked skeptical until Jake began his briefing. He told them everything. The attack on the New Horizon, the Zelak hegemony's expansion, the Ethon rescue and alliance offer. He showed them the intelligence data Kira had provided, translated into human terms. When he finished, the room was silent for a long time. Captain Morrison, Admiral Crawford finally said, You're telling us that a hostile alien empire with 3,000 warships is expanding toward Earth, and our only potential ally is a species of 50,000 pacifists. That's exactly what I'm telling you, Admiral. And I'm also telling you that we don't have much time. The Zelak move methodically, but they move constantly. Earth is already on their target list. General Paul Santos leaned forward in his chair. What kind of timeline are we looking at? Based on their expansion pattern, maybe 2 years before they reach the outer colonies. 3 years at most before they hit Earth. Defense Secretary Mary Johnson spoke up. Our current fleet consists of 200 vessels, mostly patrol ships, and system defense platforms. Even if these numbers are accurate, we're outnumbered 15-1. Numbers aren't everything, Jake replied. The Zelak have never fought an enemy that could match their technology. They've never faced coordinated resistance across multiple systems, and they've definitely never fought humans. Admiral Crawford studied the tactical displays Jake had provided. These Ethon allies of yours, what exactly are they offering? Everything they have. Their space-folding technology, advanced materials, energy weapons, and manufacturing techniques. In exchange, they want human military knowledge and protection. And you trust them? Jake thought of Kira and the gentle way she had cared for him during his recovery. They saved my life when they could have just ignored me. They're sharing their most closely guarded secrets with us. Yes, I trust them. General Santos was studying fleet deployment charts. Even with advanced technology, building enough ships to face 3,000 enemy vessels would take years we don't have. We don't need to match their numbers, Jake said. We need to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless than they are. The Zelak expect easy victories. We give them the hardest fight they've ever seen. The meeting continued for hours as military planners began working out the implications of Jake's information. Earth's entire defense strategy would need to be rebuilt from the ground up. Industrial capacity would have to be redirected toward warship production. New alliances would need to be forged, and new technologies mastered. As the session ended, Admiral Crawford pulled Jake aside. Captain, I want you to know that your report will be given the highest priority. But I have to ask, are you absolutely certain about this threat? Jake looked out through the underground facility's windows at the city above. Millions of people, going about their lives unaware that death was coming from the stars. Admiral, I watched the Zelak murder 50,000 people, including my wife and daughter. I've seen their ships and studied their tactics. They're coming whether we're ready or not. Then we'd better get ready. Within days, Earth began the largest military mobilization in human history. Shipyards that had been building civilian vessels switched to warship production. Scientists began studying Ethon technology with desperate intensity. Military planners worked around the clock developing new tactics and strategies. The Ethon, for their part, proved to be everything Jake had promised. Kira and her people shared their knowledge freely, working alongside human engineers and scientists to create new kinds of weapons and ships. The space-folding drives alone would revolutionize human space travel. But combined with human weapons technology, they created possibilities neither species had imagined alone. As Jake watched the frantic preparations from his new position as liaison between Earth and the Ethon, he thought about the Zelak commanders who had ordered the attack on the New Horizon. They believed they had destroyed another weak colony and sent a message of fear to any who might resist them. Instead, they had just given humanity the motivation and knowledge needed to destroy them. They had made the classic mistake of leaving an enemy alive to tell the tale. Now Earth knew they were coming, and Earth was ready to show them what happened when you picked a fight with the wrong species. The Zelak had awakened something they did not understand. They had started a war with humans, and humans had never learned how to quit. Earth transformed itself in ways that would have been impossible to imagine before the Zelak threat became known. Every major nation put aside old conflicts to focus on the common enemy. Resources that had been spent on Earth-based militaries were redirected to space defense. Entire industries retooled themselves to produce warships and weapons. The changes were visible from orbit. New shipyards appeared around Earth, Luna, and Mars, like metal flowers blooming in space. Asteroid mining. Operations expanded to provide raw materials. Space elevators carried endless streams of components and personnel to the construction sites. The orbital traffic that had seemed busy before became a constant river of activity. Commander Susan Blake led the naval construction program from her headquarters on Luna. She had been Earth's leading expert on space warfare, but even her experience seemed small compared to the task ahead. Building 2,000 warships in 2 years required innovations in manufacturing, design, and logistics that pushed human engineering to its limits. "We're not just building ships," she explained to Jake during one of their planning meetings. "We're building an entire new kind of military force. Every vessel has to incorporate ethon technology we barely understand, carry weapons we've never tested in combat, and be operated by crews we're training from scratch." The collaboration between humans and ethon proved more successful than anyone had dared hope. Human engineers took ethon's space-folding drives and found ways to make them smaller, faster, and more reliable. Ethon materials science combined with human manufacturing techniques produced hull plating that was both incredibly strong and surprisingly light. Most importantly, the two species learned to think differently about warfare. The ethon had always approached conflict as something to be avoided or ended quickly. Humans brought knowledge of sustained campaigns, combined operations, and strategic planning on a scale the ethon had never considered. "Your people think about war the way we think about growing our ships," Kira observed during one joint planning session. "Every part must work with every other part, and the whole must be greater than its pieces." Jake worked with Captain Roy Martinez to establish the Combined Intelligence Division, bringing together the best human analysts with ethon observers who had been watching the Zalak for decades. They recruited volunteers from among refugees of Zalak attacks, survivors from a dozen different species who brought knowledge of enemy tactics and weaknesses. The intelligence picture that emerged was both encouraging and terrifying. The Zalak were indeed powerful and ruthless, but they had grown predictable through centuries of easy victories. They followed standard patterns in every attack, used the same formations in every battle, and relied on overwhelming force rather than tactical innovation. "They've never had to adapt," explained Vera, a survivor from the reptilian Keth civilization whose homeworld had been enslaved 5 years earlier. "Every enemy they've faced has been weaker than them. They don't know how to fight when someone matches their strength." But the Zalak advantages were real. Their ships were heavily armed and well defended. Their crews were experienced and disciplined. Most importantly, they had numbers that Earth could not hope to match even with ethon help. "We'll never have 3,000 ships," Admiral Crawford admitted during a strategy meeting. "Even if we converted every civilian vessel and worked around the clock, we might field 1,000 ships at most." "Then we don't fight ship to ship," Jake replied. "We fight smarter than they do." The solution came from combining human tactical thinking with ethon technological capabilities. Instead of building ships to match Zalak designs, Earth created vessels that could do things the enemy had never seen. Ships that could appear inside enemy formations using space-folding technology. Vessels that could split into multiple smaller units or combine into larger ones as needed. Weapons that could fire through folded space to hit targets light years away. The flagship of the new fleet was the EDS Retribution, named in honor of the colonists who had died on the New Horizon. It was a massive vessel that incorporated the best of both human and ethon technology, capable of taking on an entire Zalak battle group and winning. More importantly, it served as the mobile command center for Earth's new kind of warfare. Training the crews for these new ships proved almost as challenging as building them. Earth's existing Space Navy personnel formed the core, but they needed to learn entirely new ways of thinking about space combat. The ethon provided teachers who could share their understanding of advanced technology, while human instructors focused on tactics and strategy. Jake found himself back in uniform as head of the Special Operations Training Program. He worked with volunteers from across Earth's military forces, teaching them how to fight in the strange environment of space warfare. These were soldiers and Marines who had trained for battles on planets and in atmosphere, now learning to fight in zero gravity using weapons that could destroy cities. "The Zalak expect ground invasions after orbital bombardment," Jake explained to a group of trainees. "They're used to enemies who surrender after their fleets are destroyed. We're going to show them what happens when you fight people who don't know how to quit. The psychological warfare was just as important as the physical preparations. Earth's propaganda services worked with Ethon psychologists to understand how the Zelak mind worked. They were supremely confident because they had never lost, but the confidence could become a weakness if properly exploited. Bullies expect fear, Dr. Lisa Chang from the Psychological Warfare Division explained. When someone fights back without fear, bullies don't know how to respond. Our job is to make the Zelak afraid of us before we ever fire a shot. As the months passed, the first new warships began emerging from the shipyards. Each one was tested extensively by mixed crews of humans and Ethon, pushing the vessels and their systems to the breaking point. Failures were analyzed, improvements were made, and the lessons were incorporated into ships still under construction. The alliance grew stronger as both species learned to work together. Human families adopted Ethon refugees who had nowhere else to go. Ethon teachers worked in human schools, sharing their knowledge of science and exploration. Cultural exchanges brought new perspectives to both civilizations. But underlying all the cooperation was the knowledge that war was coming. Long-range scouts reported Zelak fleets moving closer to human space. Refugee ships brought word of new conquests and atrocities. The enemy was taking their time, but they were definitely coming. Intelligence estimates 18 months until they reach the outer colonies, General Santos reported during a Joint Chiefs meeting. 2 years at most before they assault Earth itself. Then we'd better be ready, Admiral Crawford replied. The preparations took on desperate urgency as the deadline approached. Factory ships worked around the clock. Training programs ran continuously. Supply chains that had never existed before were established to keep the growing fleet operational. Jake often found himself on the observation deck of Luna Command, looking out at the construction yards where humanity's future was being built. Hundreds of ships in various stages of completion filled the space around the moon. Some were traditional human designs upgraded with Ethon technology. Others were entirely new concepts that neither species could have created alone. Kira joined him there one evening as Earth rose over the lunar horizon. "Do you think we have a chance?" she asked. Jake considered the question seriously. The odds were still terrible. The Zelak had experience, numbers, and a proven track record of success. Earth had new technology and desperate determination, but neither had been tested in real combat. "We have something they don't," Jake finally answered. "What is that?" "We have something worth fighting for. The Zelak fight to take things from others. We're fighting to protect our homes, our families, our future. That makes all the difference." As if to prove his point, a new ship slid out of the construction bay below them. The EDS New Horizon, named for the colony ship where it all began. It was sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and carrying fighters that could dance between enemy fire. But more than that, it was a symbol of what humanity could accomplish when pushed to the edge. The Zelak were coming, but they would not find the easy victory they expected. They would find humans and Ethon working together, fighting together, willing to sacrifice everything to protect what they held dear. The Forge of War had created something new in the galaxy, something the Zelak had never faced before. Soon they would learn what it meant to pick a fight with the wrong enemy. The first battle came sooner than expected. Zelak scout fleets appeared at the edges of human space 6 months ahead of intelligence projections, probing defenses and gathering information about Earth's military capabilities. What they found surprised them greatly. Instead of the scattered patrol ships they expected, the scouts encountered coordinated squadrons of vessels unlike anything in their databases. Ships that could appear without warning, strike with devastating precision, and disappear before return fire could be directed at them. Within days, the Zelak lost an entire reconnaissance fleet without destroying a single human vessel. Admiral Crawford watched the tactical displays from the command center aboard the EDS Retribution as reports flowed in from across the frontier. "They're testing us," she observed, trying to understand what they're facing. Jake stood beside her, wearing the uniform of Earth's Special Operations Command. "Good. Let them wonder. The more confused they are, the better our chances." The main Zelak invasion force arrived 3 weeks later. Over 800 ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Centauri system, expecting to overwhelm the small human colony there, as they had overwhelmed dozens of other worlds. Instead, they found something that had never existed before in the galaxy. The Battle of Centauri lasted 18 hours and changed warfare forever. Earth's fleet used space-folding technology to strike from multiple directions simultaneously, appearing inside Zelak formations and wreaking havoc before folding away to safety. Ethan precision weapons, guided by human tactical thinking, picked apart enemy ships with surgical efficiency. But the most shocking moment came when the Zelak attempted their standard intimidation tactic. The enemy fleet commander broadcast a surrender demand, threatening to destroy the colony if resistance continued. The response came not from Admiral Crawford or any human commander, but from Kira herself. "I am Kira of the Ethon Collective." Her voice reached every Zelak ship in the system. "For 3,000 years, my people chose peace over war. Today, that changes. Today, we fight alongside humanity to protect what is precious to us. Surrender now, or face the consequences of awakening a sleeping giant." The psychological effect was devastating. The Zelak had fought the Ethon before and always found them to be passive victims. The idea that these ancient pacifists would choose to fight alongside humans shattered their confidence more than any weapon could have. When the battle ended, over half the Zelak invasion fleet had been destroyed or captured. The remainder fled back to their own space, carrying word of a defeat unlike any in their history. For the first time in centuries, a Zelak invasion had been repelled, but Jake knew this was only the beginning. "They'll be back," he told the Joint Command staff after the victory celebration ended. "This time they'll bring everything they have." The Zelak response was swift and massive. Within months, they had assembled the largest invasion fleet in their history. Over 2,000 ships, including their most powerful dreadnoughts and battle stations. The armada that approached human space was capable of sterilizing entire star systems. Earth's response was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of meeting the enemy in conventional battle, human and Ethan forces struck throughout Zelak space simultaneously. Liberation fleets appeared at slave worlds across the hegemony, freeing prisoners and arming resistance movements. Convoys disappeared, communication networks went dark, and Zelak commanders found themselves fighting on dozens of fronts at once. The liberation of the Ethon homeworld of Sanctuary became the symbol of this new kind of warfare. The planet had been converted into a massive slave processing center, where millions of beings from conquered worlds awaited transportation to labor camps throughout the hegemony. Jake led the ground assault personally, taking a team of special operations soldiers through a spacefold directly into the Planetary Defense Center. While they disabled the orbital weapons, Commander Blake's fleet emerged from folded space above the planet, catching the Zelak garrison completely by surprise. The battle was swift and one-sided. The Zelak had expected to fight the passive Ethan. They remembered not human-trained warriors backed by the most advanced weapons technology in the galaxy. Within hours, the planetary defenses were down and liberation forces were landing across the surface. But the most important moment came when Jake found Kira in the prison complex, where she had been held for 2 years. The gentle Ethon who had saved his life was scarred and changed by her captivity, but her spirit remained unbroken. "I knew you would come," she said as Jake cut away her restraints. "I told the others that humans never abandon their friends." "Never," Jake agreed. "That's just not how we work." The liberation of Sanctuary triggered uprisings across the Zelak hegemony. Species that had been enslaved for generations rose up when they learned that the supposedly invincible Zelak could be defeated. Human Ethon task forces appeared throughout enemy space, providing weapons and training to resistance movements. The Zelak military, faced with rebellions on dozens of worlds and an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once, began to fragment. Some commanders fled to unknown regions of space with their fleets intact, hoping to establish new empires far from human reach. Others attempted to negotiate ceasefires with local resistance movements. The end came not through a final climactic battle, but through the simple collapse of an empire that had grown too large and too cruel to sustain itself. Without the fear that had held their conquest together, the hegemony simply fell apart. Jake found himself back where it all began, in the debris field where the New Horizon had been destroyed. But the space was no longer empty. A memorial station had been built there, surrounded by ships from dozens of liberated species. The Ethon had insisted on naming it Morrison's Stand, in honor of the human who had refused to let their sacrifice be forgotten. As he stood on the station's observation deck, Jake could see representatives from across the former hegemony working together to build something better. The Galactic Liberation Alliance, they called it. A confederation of free worlds dedicated to preventing another Zelak-style empire from ever rising again. Kira approached him as he watched the busy space traffic. Her scars had healed, but he could see that her experience as a prisoner had changed her. She was no longer the purely peaceful being who had rescued him 3 years ago. The Ethan have learned much from humanity, she said, joining him at the window. We have learned that sometimes peace must be defended with strength. We have learned that there are things worth fighting for. Jake nodded, thinking of Lisa and Emma and all the others who had died when humanity still believed the universe was mostly empty and safe. And we learned that we're not alone out here, that there are good people among the stars who deserve protection. What will you do now? Kira asked. The war is over. The Zelak are scattered. Your people are safe. Jake considered the question as he watched ships from a dozen different species working together to unload supplies for refugee camps. The immediate threat was over, but the galaxy was still full of dangers. There were other predatory species out there, other bullies who thought might made right. The same thing we've always done, he finally answered. We'll keep an eye on the neighborhood. We'll help our friends and stand up to anyone who thinks they can pick on smaller species. Even when it's dangerous? Even when you might lose? Jake smiled, remembering the moment when he had floated alone in space, surrounded by debris and death, thinking his story was over. The Zelak had made a mistake that day, leaving one human alive to carry word of their cruelty back to Earth. That mistake had cost them everything. Especially then, he said. That's just how humans work. Someone does right by us, we remember. Someone does wrong by our friends. We remember that too. Outside the station, the memorial lights flickered in patterns that honored the dead while celebrating the living. The New Horizon's 50,000 colonists had not died in vain. Their sacrifice had led to the liberation of millions and the birth of a new kind of galactic civilization. The Zelak had saved one human by accident, thinking it didn't matter. In return, humanity had come back to save them all. It was, Jake, reflected a perfectly human response to the situation. The galaxy was learning what that meant, and most of its inhabitants liked what they were discovering. The rescue was complete, but the real work was just beginning. There were always more people to help, more bullies to face down, and more proof needed that sometimes the good guys really do win. Humanity and its allies were ready for whatever came next.